Hello guys, it is Creative Theories here, and we are back talking about the MCU, and today we're going to be talking about one of the biggest characters in all of the MCU, but he's not an Avenger. It is Nick Fury, probably one of the biggest characters in the MCU, and has appeared in, I think, almost 10 of the 23 movies. He's a huge character, but just isn't regarded as big, because he isn't a proper Avenger, but he is the head of S.H.I.E.L.D. and everyone loves Nick Fury. He's had many big films, and then he's had little small cameos in several little films, and one of his biggest films has got to be Captain America the Winter Soldier, and that is exactly what we are going to be talking about today, because there is something in this movie that isn't exactly right, and Marvel sort of contradicted itself throughout this MCU timeline, all because of this one tiny scene in The Winter Soldier, and it is all about Nick Fury's main trait, his eye. I mean, his eye and the black eye patch is basically the way how you recognize Nick Fury. If you see a guy with an eye patch, you think of Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury. And of course, it's been a huge plot point about why Nick Fury lost his eye. I mean, Captain Marvel, one of the main movies where Nick Fury has a predominant role, his arc is mainly all about finding out about superheroes, and so that we can find out how he lost his eye. And of course, we find out in Captain Marvel, it is because of the cat Goose. But, like I was saying, Captain America the Winter Soldier doesn't really follow along with this idea, and we're going to have a look at that in more detail. But before we go any further, please make sure that you've clicked that red subscribe button down below, and have your notifications turned on so that you don't miss any more Marvel content from us. So, let's get on with the video. So, there is a mistake in Captain America the Winter Soldier all about Nick Fury's eye, and we're going to look at that mistake in a little while, but first of all, let's check in with Captain Marvel, and let's see how Nick Fury actually lost his eye in the first place, or got it really hurt so that you couldn't see out of it. And how it goes is Fury gets his eye hurt first, not by the cat Goose, but instead in a car crash when he's fighting a Skrull who's disguised as Phil Coulson. And the car crash happens, and then he hurts his eye, and it starts bleeding all over. He then has steri strips on top of his eye to help it heal, and the doctor asks if he's going to be okay, and he says it'll be fine. And for the rest of the movie, he has those steri strips on, and it's sort of hinting that in later on in the movie we are going to find out what actually happens to hurt his eye. However, then the embarrassing part happens. Goose the cat scratches his eye, and that's how he gets an eye patch. However, in the final scene of Captain Marvel, where Fury comes up with the idea of the Avengers Initiative, Phil Coulson comes up to him and tells Fury
that the Kree burned your eye out because you refused to give them the Tesseract.
So, as we've seen from there, basically, Nick Fury makes up a lie that he lost his eye in battle due to the Kree, and that's what goes around S.H.I.E.L.D., and that's how people think in S.H.I.E.L.D. how Nick Fury lost their eye. Now let's move on to Captain America the Winter Soldier, and let's look at this one scene in the movie, the most smallest scene ever, probably the most forgettable scene as well, and it's a really small detail, but in this movie there is a mistake concerning Nick Fury's eye, so let's have a look at it. So in this scene, it's the first scene where Captain America first meets Alexander Pierce after Nick Fury has just supposedly died, and this is basically the scene before Hydra fully tries to take over S.H.I.E.L.D. In this scene, Pierce basically tells Steve a bunch of lies, but the parts that he tells him at the beginning could easily be true, and that is because he's telling Steve about him and Nick Fury's history together. Now, the parts that we can trust is the history between Pierce and Nick Fury, as he wouldn't want to lie about their past to Captain America, as Nick Fury might have already told Captain America about how he met Pierce, so it wouldn't make sense for Pierce to lie about their history, as it would make the Captain even more suspicious of Alexander Pierce than he already is. So, with that out of the way, we come to a very small point in the film, almost unnoticeable, unless you're paying a lot of attention. At the very beginning of their meeting, Alexander Pierce shows Captain America an image of Alexander and Nick 5 years after meeting for the first time. However, the picture shows Nick Fury without any hair and with both eyes still. Pierce says in the scene, "That photo was taken 5 years after me and Nick met when I was at State Department in Bogota. ELN rebels took the embassy and security got me out, but the rebels took hostages. Nick was deputy chief of SHIELD station there." Alexander Pierce carries on telling Rogers about the story and what happened and how Nick saved his daughter, and then Steve asks, "So you gave him a promotion?" And Alexander finishes by saying, "I've never had any cause to regret it." Unfortunately, I can't include the clip in this video, so you're just going to have to believe me. However, if you want to check it out for yourselves and check that I'm not lying about what he says, the scene starts at 41 minutes 40 into the movie. So, this tells us that the picture Pierce shows Rogers was when Nick Fury was being promoted as director of SHIELD. However, we know that this takes place after Captain Marvel, which took place in 1995. This is because as soon as he's director, he tries to put together the Avengers, which took him 15 years for him to organise the Avengers Initiative, which takes place in 2012. 15 years before 2012, that was 1997, which takes place after Captain Marvel, as Captain Marvel gave him the idea for all of the Avengers Initiative. So, the picture was taken in 1997 when Nick Fury was made director of SHIELD by Alexander Pierce. It even specifies this all happening on Marvel's wiki page for Nick Fury, where the first paragraph about his early life is all about Nick Fury and how he became a part of SHIELD, and then how he got introduced to Verse and the Captain Marvel story takes place, and then the second paragraph is all about his promotion up to the director of SHIELD by Alexander Pierce. So it's clearly meant to happen in that logical order, otherwise it wouldn't be on this page and wouldn't be so clearly throughout all the movies. So why does he not have any hair and not an eye? Now the hair part I'm sure we can all guess, but it still doesn't clarify why he doesn't have an eye. And the eye, like I said before, is a major part of Nick's story arc. It builds him up to the character we know about today. It's so big, especially in The Winter Soldier, as they even use it against Pierce when they're getting access to all of SHIELD and Hydra in the climax and Pierce dies. The only way they get access is that Nick Fury uses his scratched eye to gain him access, and Pierce didn't realise both eyes were registered into the system. So clearly, there's just a mistake in its own film, as surely Pierce would know all about Fury's scratched eye. At the end of Captain Marvel, Phil Coulson, like I said before, says that SHIELD believed it happened during Nick's time in battle fighting the Kree, and that's to disguise the embarrassment that actually it was a cat that scratched his eye. So either way, this is a mistake. Of course, it wouldn't have been intentional from Marvel. After all, Captain Marvel came out years after The Winter Soldier, and it's the tiniest of details, but it doesn't mean we won't notice it. So the question is, why in this picture does Nick Fury have his two eyes when he should be having an eye patch? So let's discuss. So I think the most obvious reason that would come to mind for this is to do with what happened at the end of Nick Fury's last movie, the last movie of the Infinity Saga, Spider-Man Far From Home, where in the end credits scene, the internet and everyone went wild because of what Marvel revealed. They revealed that Maria Hill and Nick Fury have been Skrulls all this time, and throughout the entire movie, they were disguised as Skrulls. And of course, it hasn't specified yet, I'm sure it will later on in the movies, maybe Captain Marvel 2 or Spider-Man 3, hasn't specified for how long Maria Hill and Nick Fury have actually been Skrulls for. Could have been ever since 1995 when Captain Marvel takes place, and throughout all of this, Nick Fury was a Skrull on Earth, and actually he's been up with the Skrulls in space, checking it out. There's been lots of theories that maybe it might have been around Avengers Age of Ultron time. There's theories that happened just before Infinity War. There's many different times when it would have happened, and it still hasn't been confirmed when in the timeline Nick Fury is actually Nick Fury and when the timeline Nick Fury is a Skrull. So in this case, maybe you could say that actually it is a Skrull, but it's a lot less likely as it's only just happened. So I really doubt Nick Fury would want to be a Skrull yet. He'd want to get the Avengers Initiative going and then maybe let the Skrull take his place so that he can plan something up in space, because we still don't know what he's planning. So it might be a Skrull in this picture, but I highly doubt it. And another reason could be, again, to that scene at the end of Captain Marvel with Phil Coulson, where he hands Nick Fury a box of fake eyes that he can use, and that could be what has happened here. After all, this is when he's getting a promotion, he's getting something big. The director of S.H.I.E.L.D. It's absolutely huge. Maybe, I know it's iconic for him to have the eye patch, but maybe for such a big thing, he wanted to have both eyes and look really, really presentable. So maybe it's as simple as he just got one of the fake eyes that Phil Coulson has given him in the scene, put it in his eye hole, and then later on he takes it out and uses the eye patch. So it could be as simple as that, or it could be a Skrull. If you have any other ideas for why enough he has these two eyes in this picture, please make sure you leave them down in the comments down below. But after all, it's just basically a Marvel mistake that we have spent way too much detail talking about in this video. So guys, that is going to end it there. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have, make sure that you smash the like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Again, let us know your thoughts on Captain America the Winter Soldier and Nick Fury's missing eye, all down below in the comments if you have any other theories about why he doesn't have his eye. And if you've got any other Marvel mistakes throughout any of the movies, make sure you leave them down below there. And as always, we've been here on Gates of Theories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.